The cornerstone of American democracy is our United States Constitution. Within this founding document, the Bill of Rights outlines the unalienable natural rights identified by our founding fathers. The very first of these guaranteed rights seeks to protect our religious freedoms, stating that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. My name is Sharon Saylor, and I'm going to discuss Chapter 13, Isaac Backus and John Leland, Baptist Contributions to Religious Liberty in the Founding Era, from Daniel Dreisbach and Mark David Hall's book, Faith and the Founders of the American Republic. Now, this chapter provides a profile of the rise and popularity of the Baptist faith, as well as how two Baptist ministers not only interpreted their ideas regarding freedom of religion, but also how their contributions led to the idea we refer to today as the separation of church and state. According to Baptist leader George W. Truett, this concept was preeminently a Baptist achievement. Now, to understand this modern evolution of our freedom of religion, we must examine the historiography behind this concept. Freedom of religion was referred to as liberty of conscience for many years, and many prominent thinkers and church leaders began to view this as a natural right. One of the earliest advocates of religious tolerance in colonial America was Roger Williams. Roger Williams was the founder of the First Baptist Church in America. Roger Williams was banished from the Puritan colony of Massachusetts, eventually finding the religiously tolerant colony of Rhode Island. Williams believed that all people had a natural right in regards to religion, or what he referred to as the liberty of conscience. After his banishment, Williams became a Baptist and advocated not only for religious tolerance, but also for the separation of church and state. In his 1644 book, The Bloody Tenet of Persecution for Cause of Conscience, discussed, and Mr. Cotton's letter examined and answered, he said that the Church of the Jews under the Old Testament and the type, and the Church of the Christians under the New Testament and the antitype, were both separate from the world, and that when they have opened a gap in the hedge, or a wall of separation between the garden of the church and the wilderness of the world, God hath ever broke down the wall itself, removed the candlestick, and made his garden a wilderness. He is credited with being the first to use the words wall of separation in regards to religion and government. John Locke also advocated a liberty of conscience in his 1685 essay, A Letter Concerning Toleration, when he sternly admonished those Christians who are cruel and implacable towards those that differ from him in opinion, he being indulgent to such iniquities as are unbecoming the name of a Christian. Let such a one talk ever so much of the church, he plainly demonstrates by his actions that as another kingdom he aims at, and not the advancement of the kingdom of God. Within this essay, Locke scolded Christians who tried to force others to practice their religion, but are destitute of charity, meekness, and goodwill towards all mankind. He also talks about this in his 1689 Two Treatises of Government and an essay concerning human understanding. Voltaire took a different approach in his 1763 treatise on toleration. He pleaded for religious tolerance by sharing the horrible execution of Jean Calas, a Protestant, at the hands of the Catholics who was executed. He asked, is each citizen to be allowed to trust only his own reason and to believe whatever this enlightened or deluded reason dictates him to be? And he believed so. Now, these thinkers influenced our founding fathers, such as James Madison in his 1785 Memorial and Remonstrance Against Religious Assessments, in which he basically argued that religion, or the duty we owe to our Creator and the manner of discharging it, can be directed only by reason and conviction, not by force or violence. Also, in his 1786, Jefferson's 1786 Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, Thomas Jefferson advocated for the disestablishment of church and state. He wrote, Almighty God had created the mind free, and all attempts to influence it by temporal punishments or by civil incapacitations tend only to beget habits of hypocrisy and meanness, and are a departure from the plan of the holy author of our religion. In his 1802 letter to the Danbury Baptists, he wrote that believing with you that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship, that the legitimate powers of government reach actions only and not opinions. I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people which declared that their legislators should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of eternal separation between church and state. Now, how does all of this tie into my chapter? Well, this chapter that I read talked about Baptists in colonial America and how the Baptist religion grew by 400% from 1770 to 1790. By 1830, 1 out of every 27 Americans became Baptists. Now, at first, the Baptists were separated into groups like the Particular or Regular Baptists and the Separatists or New Light Baptists. But later, this is going to kind of diffuse together, and the Baptists are going to lessen their disagreements. We're going to see the rise of two main Baptist preachers. One, Isaac Backus. He was influenced by the preaching of Jonathan Edwards and George Whitefield in the 1730s and the 1740s during the First Great Awakening. Now, Isaac Backus was important because he also advocated for this religion of freedom. He fought against the Massachusetts religious establishment policy as well, wherein state taxes would support the Congregationalist church by comparing it to taxation without representation. Another preacher was John Leland. John Leland was influenced by the revivals of the Second Great Awakening. He was known to have a down-to-earth manner and sometimes was even viewed as uneducated. He was a very political man and even shared Thomas Jefferson's view of government, that the least type of government is the best. Now, what would this freedom of religion mean in America? Now, to understand that, we need to understand both of these men's ideas of freedom of religion. Now, Backus believed that a church is a free and voluntary society, while Leland argued that every man must give an account of himself to God, and therefore every man ought to be at liberty to serve God in a way that he can best reconcile to his conscience. Leland went so far as to even advocate for freedom of religion for Jews, Turks, pagans, and Christians. However, their views towards disestablishment differed from each other. Backus had more of a one-sided separation. He believed that it was acceptable for government to have a major role in public life, even allowing officials to affirm their faith in God before taking office. Whereas Leland, he had a two-sided separation where he believed that the government should never give the impression that Christianity was favored over other religions, but also believed that religion was important. Now, Thomas Jefferson had a different view. His wall of separation was much more radical, and it was not fully embraced by all Baptists. However, the Baptists did influence our modern ideas of religious toleration and disestablishment.